Chapter 700. What rumors? Yijing stared at her and did not answer. After a long time, she revealed a gentle smile. That's right. How would you know when you're cultivating? Forget it, let's not talk about that. Today, I'll come over to sit here and chat with you. Bai Ruofei secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Seeing her close her eyes and drink tea, she began to talk about other things and chatted with her. On the other side, in Fengjiu's cave. As soon as she returned, she entered the cave and opened the pill furnace to begin refining. Among the pill formulas that her master left for her, there was a medicinal pill called the Truth Pill. It was a Tier 2 medicinal pill. With her current alchemy cultivation, wanting to refine a Tier 2 Truth Pill really wasn't a problem. The owner of the cave was refining pills, while the three beasts outside were lying side by side and looking at the cave. They didn't go in to disturb him. Since that day, they didn't steal spirit ginseng or anything else, because the pills that their owner refined for them were even better. Eating one pill could last them half a month, and it could also strengthen the aura in their bodies. It was much better than eating spirit ginseng raw. Because the spirit ginseng was no longer stolen from the medicine peak, the matter was gradually put aside and left unsettled. Inside the alchemy room, Fengjiu added the datura flower, hemp 3-duan, and other herbs according to the pill recipe and controlled the refinement with her life flame source. About an hour later, a medicinal fragrance filled the air, and even she couldn't help but feel her mind shake when she smelled it. It's worthy of being called the Truth Pill. Just a mere medicinal fragrance can make people lose their guard. If this thing were to be auctioned, there would be many people who would want it, right? She whispered softly. Recently, she had not put any new medicines into the market, but she could send this pill to the black market to be auctioned. As she thought about it, she did not get distracted. Seeing that the pill was about to be completed, she immediately turned her hand and added more fire. Injecting her spiritual aura, she finally patted the furnace and took out the pill inside. Second-level Truth Pill, for pill veins. Not bad, but I don't know how effective it is. She whispered softly, looking at the 3 truth pills in her hand. She thought that she should find someone to test the effects of this pill first. But who should she test it on? She muttered to herself as she walked out of the immortal's cave. She held the 3 pills in her hand and looked at them. Who should she use to test the pills? Although it was refined according to that pill formula, she didn't know where her master got those pill formulas from. She had refined some of the pill formulas in the past, and she could refine strange pills according to them. Therefore, even if she knew that some of the pills she refined weren't poisonous, she still had to try it before she could be at ease. Because the smell of the 3 pills in her hand was too overwhelming, the 3 beasts that were lying together unexpectedly stood up at the same time when they smelled the scent of the pills in her hand, drooling as they stared at the pills in her hand. Seeing this, Fengjiu couldn't help but laugh. These aren't for you to eat. These 3 are truth pills used to make people speak the truth. They should be useless to beasts. She sat down on the grass, took out a bottle, and was just about to put the 3 medicinal pills into it. Unexpectedly, a large tongue suddenly rolled out, and it actually swept away the last medicinal pill in her hand. She was stunned for a moment, and she couldn't help but glare at Senior White. Old Bai, you greedy ghost. That's a truth pill. It's not for beasts to eat, it's for humans to eat. Moreover, it hasn't been tested yet. If anything happens to you after eating it, don't say that I didn't warn you. Chapter 701. She saw Lao Bai burp, and his eyes rolled back. His legs went soft as he lay on the grass. His tongue rolled up from the horse's mouth, and his body began to twitch slightly. Seeing this, Fengjiu was shocked. Lao Bai? Lao Bai, how are you? That's impossible. I've tested this pill. It's not poisonous. Even if a beast ate it, it shouldn't be poisoned. Seeing Lao Bai like this, she was worried. Just as she was about to take out an antidote pill from her space and feed it to him, she heard Lao Bai, whose eyes had rolled back, suddenly show an intoxicated expression. He unexpectedly stuck out his tongue and licked her face. Just as she was about to scold him, she heard a voice that made her body stiffen. She was stunned. Master is so beautiful, so beautiful. Master is the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. I like Master the most. I even peeked at Master bathing. Master's figure is so good. Master. Hearing Lao Bai chattering away with an intoxicated expression, the corner of Fengjiu's mouth twitched, and a few black lines appeared on her forehead. Who could tell her why the truth pill she refined would allow a beast that wasn't a divine beast to speak human language? Also, peeking at her bathing? Lao Bai, this fellow, was itching for a beating. The cloud-swallowing beast was stunned as well. After all, only divine beasts could speak the human language. Beasts below the level of divine beasts could only communicate with their masters by contracting with them. Although they didn't know what kind of beast White was, and its strength was quite formidable, it had always been unable to speak the human language. How could it speak the human language after taking a pill? However, peeking at Master bathing? It was really bold. It even said that Master's figure was so good. TSK, if that terrifying man knew, he would definitely break its head. Only the big black bear sat there in a daze. Although divine beasts had developed intelligence, it expressed that its intelligence was limited and it couldn't understand Lao Bai, who wasn't even a divine beast, speaking human language. After the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, Old White, who had been blabbering on and on about all the scoundrels he had done in the past, finally stopped and licked his lips. He looked anxiously at his master, who had a dark expression on her face, and immediately lowered his head and laid down in front of her. He obediently shut his mouth and didn't dare to say anything else, but his ponytail shook excitedly. Lao Bai, are you done? Do you want to continue? Fengjiu pinched its ear and stared at it with a fake smile.
Ouch. Ouch.
Ouch, ouch. Master, be gentle. Lao Bai immediately gasped and raised its head. When Fengjiu heard that it could still speak after the effects of the drug wore off, she was also stunned. She couldn't help but loosen her grip on its ear. You can still speak? God, wasn't it the truth pill? Lao Bai grinned excitedly and revealed a row of horse teeth. It said excitedly, Master, aren't you happy that I can speak? I'm very happy. I, Lao Bai, can finally speak human language. This is a wonderful thing that I've been looking forward to for a long time. As expected, following Master is the best thing that I, Lao Bai, have done. Master, do you have any other pills? If you have one more, maybe I can turn into a human. Turn into your head. She directly slapped its head and glared at it. She said to Tunyun, look after it. Don't let it run around and cause trouble. She had to go back and study it. What was wrong with the truth pill? Just as she was about to walk into the cave, a voice came from behind her, causing her to stumble and almost fall. Chapter 702. Fengjiu turned around and glared at it. Shut your mouth. You're not allowed to speak human language in front of others. Otherwise, I'll make sure you'll never be able to make a sound. A beast that was not a divine beast could speak human language. If others knew, how much trouble would it cause? When Lao Bai heard this, it immediately shut its mouth like a human and obediently lay back on the grass. Its master was someone who did what she said. It did not dare to challenge her patience. When Fengjiu entered the cave, Tunyun and the big black bear were sitting outside. The two beasts stared at Lao Bai with their 4 eyes. When Lao Bai saw this, it raised its chin proudly and glared at Tunyun.
What?
Were you frightened by your godfather Ma? I told you long ago that your godfather Ma is not an ordinary beast. How about it? Did you see that? I can speak human language even though I'm not a divine beast. How can I be like you? Tunyun glanced at it. What are you so proud of? Didn't Master say it? If you dare to speak human language in front of others, I'll make sure you'll never be able to make a sound. Don't think that Master was just saying it. If the fact that you can speak human language even though you're not a divine beast spreads, it will only cause trouble for Master. So you better keep your mouth shut. Lao Bai did not talk back. After all, its intelligence was not low. Although it was a little lecherous, it still knew this kind of thing. In the cave's pill room, Fengjiu looked at the remaining 2 pills. Whether it was the color or the medicine used, there was no mistake. But how did it make the beast speak? Although she was puzzled, She was certain that the pill formula was indeed the formula for the truth pill. Lao Bai had eaten that pill and spat out all its secrets.
There was no doubt about this.
There must be something wrong. Where is it? She closed her eyes and pondered. In her mind, she recalled the process and steps of refining the pill. She recalled the medicinal properties and effects of each medicine. Suddenly, a light flashed in her mind. I used too much spiritual herbs of speech. Thus, she opened the furnace again and refined another batch of pills. This time it was the same formula, but she adjusted the dosage. After about 4 hours, another batch of pills came out of the furnace. This time, she took out 3 pills. However, only 2 of them were successful. The last one was a poison pill. She took out the 2 pills from before and compared them. The color and size were exactly the same. The only difference was that if she looked carefully, she could smell that the medicinal smell was slightly fainter. It should be right this time. As she spoke, she was only a few words of the 3 to see the 3 beasts outside. 2. For 2. Of course, it's to protect masters, Lao Bai said with great enthusiasm. Of you, to you.
To 2.
To 2. If you want to go, you go. I'm not going. Little Black, are you going? Lao Bai looked at the big black bear and asked. The big black bear scratched its head. It looked at Lao Bai and then at Tun Yun. Finally, it shook its head. It did not dare to go. Seeing this, Lao Bai snorted and lay back down listlessly. Chapter 703. Fengjiu? What are you doing here? Seeing him, Bai Ruofei couldn't help but stand up. Her originally nervous expression became even more nervous. I'm here to look for Yi Jing. Her lips slightly curled as she looked at Yi Jing. I have something to discuss with you. Hearing this, Yi Jing stood up and bid farewell to Bai Ruofei before walking towards Fengjiu. Following her to a secluded place, she asked, Aren't we going to take her to the teaching area? No need. I have a better way to deal with her. Her eyes narrowed with a smile as she hooked her finger at Bai Ruofei, indicating for her to come closer. Seeing this, Yi Jing moved closer and lowered her ear to listen to Fengjiu's whispers. Nodding her head, she said, Okay, I got it. I'll go now. Saying this, she turned around and left. Not long after, Fengjiu went to Bai Ruofei's courtyard and directly sealed her acupoints before carrying her away. At the entrance of the spiritual academy, Bai Ruofei's hands were tied together as she hung between the stone pillars. Her feet were suspended nearly a meter above the ground. She was unconscious and swaying there. The weight of her body was supported by the ropes that bound her hands. As a result, her hands were strangled and bleeding. Isn't that the Bai Ruofei who always follows Yi Jing? Why is she being hung up here?
It's Bai Ruofei.
Why is she unconscious? Who hung her here? Did she offend someone? More and more students from the surrounding spiritual academies started to gather as they pointed at Bai Ruofei, who was being hung up. However, no one had any thoughts of untying her. Not far away, seeing that there were already quite a number of students gathered around, Fengjiu curled his lips. Picking up a small stone, he flicked his hand and unsealed her acupoint. When the acupoint was unsealed, Bai Ruofei let out a muffled groan as the pill that Fengjiu had placed in her mouth slid down her throat before she could react. Hiss! When she regained consciousness, the pain in her hands made her suck in a breath of cold air. She struggled to untie herself, but found herself suspended in the air. Her hands were tied tightly, and she couldn't untie herself. She didn't know what was going on, but she saw that there were many students surrounding her. Thus, she called for help.
Who's going to let me down?
Please help me. Untie me and let me down. Aren't you the one who always follows senior sister Yi Jing? Why are you hanging here? Did you offend someone?
A student raised his voice and asked.
He walked forward, wanting to untie her. However, when he heard the following words, he couldn't help but freeze. He looked at the white-clothed woman who was hanging in the air with astonishment. Yi Jing? Yes. I'm good sisters. We who's good sisters? That slut's acting all day long. As soon as the voice came out, Bai Ruofei panicked and her face instantly paled. However, for some reason, she seemed to have a stomach full of words that she wanted to say. Even if she wanted to, she couldn't control it. Even if she wanted to shut her mouth, she still couldn't stop herself from speaking. Chapter 704. The crowd below was dumbfounded as they watched Bai Ruofei continue to talk about secret matters. Listening to how she had framed Yi Jing and how she had started a rumor, the students of the spiritual academies sucked in a mouthful of cold air as a single sentence surfaced in their minds. A woman's heart is the most poisonous. Yi Jing had treated her like a sister, yet she had framed her out of jealousy and ruined her reputation. This woman, her heart was simply too black. Not far away, Fengjiu rubbed his chin.
Pretty boy.
Does she look like a pretty boy? That's simply nonsense. He was clearly a handsome man who was loved by everyone. Squinting her eyes, she glanced at the teachers and Yi Jing not far away. It seemed that she didn't need to explain anymore. Thus, she turned around and quietly left. On her way back, she went to the ovens to get some food. After the effects of the medicine wore off, Bai Ruofei's face turned pale as she looked at the condemning gazes of the people below. Listening to the curses and the angry expressions of the teachers, her heart sank. She knew that she was finished. Blood rushed to her head as her vision turned black. Unable to bear the following scene, she fainted. Too hateful. How could the academy have such a student? Too hateful. The hot-tempered instructor Lu cursed as he ordered the students around him, take her down and escort her to the dean's office for punishment. Yi Jing? Yi Jing? When the teachers thought of calling Yi Jing over to inquire about the reason, they noticed that the girl who had been by their side just now had disappeared. Seeing this, they didn't pay much attention to it and only let the students bring Bai Ruofei back to await her punishment. In the main peak, she spoke of the matter herself. The Vice Academy had looked at Instructor Lu in astonishment and asked, no one forced him to speak. Yes, it's like this. When we rushed over, the student was hung on a stone pillar at the entrance of the academy. Her expression was one of panic and fear. She wanted to shut her mouth several times, but she couldn't stop herself from speaking. This student has already been escorted to the dean's office for punishment. Expel him from the academy and blacklist him, never to be admitted again. The vice headmaster waved his hand, indicating for Director Lu to withdraw. Hearing this, Guide Lu acknowledged and retreated. Before he left, he could not help but raise his head to look at the man in white. This person was said to be Elder Tianji's disciple, young Master Mo Chen. Why would you tell the truth yourself? No one would do such a thing, right? Could it be that he's being controlled by someone? The vice-chancellor stroked his beard thoughtfully. Mo Chen picked up the teacup and gently scraped the tea. Looking at the tea leaves floating in the tea, his eyes flickered and he said calmly, truth pills.
What?
The vice president turned to look at him. In this world, there used to be a type of pill called the truth pill. As long as one consumes it, one will be able to proactively speak the truth. However, this pill formula has been lost for many years. Truth pill? The vice president was slightly startled. With a strange expression, he asked, how could our academy have such a pill? What's more, the pill formula has been lost for a long time. However, as soon as his voice fell, he seemed to have thought of something and his expression became even more strange. This matter, could it be done by Fengjiu? However, he's a student who just entered the alchemy department. Even if he has the pill formula, he shouldn't be able to refine the truth pill, right? Chapter 705. Hearing this, the vice president stroked his beard and narrowed his eyes. If that's really the case, then that's good. He smiled. Our Star Cloud Academy has almost been forgotten by people, especially in the exchange competition with 6th class academies and above. We don't even have a student who can participate in the competition. If he really is proficient in the way of alchemy, even if he can't reach foundation establishment in the future, he won't be looked down upon if he has achievements in alchemy. The next morning, when Fengjiu was still sleeping in, Guan Xilin's voice came from outside the cave. Xiaojiu? Xiaojiu? He was wearing the dark blue student uniform of the Xian Academy. His posture was tall and sturdy, and he was in high spirits. His eyes were sharp and hidden, and his whole body emitted the aura of a strong cultivator. In less than 3 months, he had broken through the 9th floor of the Xian Tower, and his strength had increased greatly. Now, he was already a martial ancestor realm cultivator. Among the students of the Xian Academy, there were few who could compare to him. Guan Xilin's name had spread throughout the Xian Academy in less than a day after he came out of the Xian Tower. As a new student, he had become the #1 student of the Xian Academy in just a few months. He called out a few times, but didn't hear any movement. She must have fallen asleep. He smiled and sat down under a tree. He looked at the big black bear guarding the cave and said with a smile, "You're the sacred beast that Xiaojiu brought back from the 10,000 Beast Mountain range? I didn't expect that she would keep such a big guy." "Ayo!" Little Black roared, but didn't attack him. He just squatted and stared at him vigilantly. "No need to roar. You can't scare me. I'm your master's older brother, understand?" Guan Xilin said with a smile. He casually glanced and saw Lao Bai emerge from the grass not far away. "Hey, Guan, you're here." When Lao Bai saw Guan Xilin, he couldn't help but excitedly greet him. He wagged his tail and trotted over, proud and proud. "Guan, I, Lao Bai, can speak now. Are you scared?" Ha 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 ha. When he heard Lao Bai speak in human language and even called him Guan, he felt a few black lines appear on his forehead and his expression became strange. Seeing it walk closer, he sized it up and asked, "Old White, you're still the same. You're not a divine beast, so how can you speak?" "Why can't I speak? I, Old White, am not an ordinary horse. In addition, I have an extraordinary master. It's only a matter of time before I speak human language." Its voice couldn't hide its pride. If it had come from a human's mouth, it wouldn't have been strange. However, it had come from the horse's mouth. Coupled with its proud little eyes, no matter how one looked at it, the corner of one's mouth twitched. It was simply inconceivable. "Brother? You came out of the profound tower." Feng Jiu's sleepy voice sounded. Guan Xilin looked over and saw her walking out while yawning. Her eyes were half closed, and she looked like she hadn't woken up yet. He smiled and said, "I came out last night. I heard about what happened to you at the academy recently, so I came to find you this morning. You really attract attention wherever you go. You even hid in this almost abandoned alchemy institution, but you still managed to cause so much trouble. You can't blame me. It's them who came to find trouble with me." Chapter 706. Guan Xilin smiled and nodded, and not bad. I advanced to martial ancestor realm in the profound tower. In fact, when I was training outside with the mercenary group for a few months, whether it was my speed, martial skills, or reaction time, they were all constantly improving. I just lacked an opportunity to advance. This time, the profound tower just happened to help me break through to martial ancestor realms so quickly. What exactly is the profound tower? How is it inside? Are there many people inside? She asked curiously. She had only heard that the profound tower was a good place for the students of the profound academy to improve their own strength. She had been in the academy for so long, but she had never seen it. There aren't many people inside. Those who enter are all martial grandmasters. There are 9 floors inside, and the higher you go, the harder it is to pass. Some students are trapped on the 3rd or 4th floor and can't go any further. Aside from martial skills, it can also quickly increase a student's speed and profound chi. The most mysterious is the 9th floor. The 9th floor of the profound tower will only change according to each person who enters. When I went in, I encountered an illusion, and it took me half a month to get out of it. It's that powerful. She touched her chin, and her eyes moved slightly. And I think you should find time to go to the profound tower and try it out. As he spoke, he told her about some of the things he encountered while training outside. Finally, he asked, "You haven't built your foundation yet? I remember that you've been stuck at Great Spirit Master for a long time." "Not yet. Yesterday, I wanted to take a mission and go out for a walk. Who knew that I would encounter that little white flower, so I was delayed. The academy can't just let people out casually, and there's no food. Recently, I've been craving for food. Hearing this, Guanxilin laughed. The academy doesn't have that, but I heard that you've been to the 10,000 Beast Mountain range. You can go there to cultivate. There are wild boars there. You can catch them and roast them. I've been there. After all, it's only a 6th rank country. The highest level of beast is only a sacred beast. I haven't even seen the divine beast spicy soup. It's not difficult for me, so I'll be bored there. She waved her hand. She saw Old White, who was originally wandering around, twist its butt and tail as it excitedly ran not far away.
Hey.
Beauty Yijing, you're getting more and more beautiful. Fengjiu and Guanxilin's mouths twitched. Guanxilin looked at Lao Bai, then at Fengjiu, and asked, "What's wrong with Lao Bai? How come you can talk?" Such a lecherous horse could drool at beauties even without opening its mouth. What would happen if it opened its mouth? He could even imagine that if Xiao Jiu rode it on the streets in the future, would it whistle and flirt with the girls on the street? Fengjiu looked at Yijing, who was frozen in place, and said helplessly, "It became like this yesterday after eating the mutated true word pill that I just refined. This Lao Bai, I clearly told it not to open its mouth in front of others to avoid scaring them. But it seems that it forgot all about it when it saw a beauty." As she spoke, she nudged him with her elbow and revealed an expectant smile. "Brother, let me tell you, this Yijing is a good person. She's the #1 beauty in the academy. Her character is good, and her cultivation is also good. I think she's quite pleasing to the eye, so I wanted to introduce her to you last time. Oh right, this girl is quite smart. She even knows that I'm a woman disguised as a man." Chapter 707.
Not bad.
I was thinking. Before she could finish her sentence, Yijing walked over with a stunned expression. As she walked, she turned her head to look at Lao Bai, who was following beside her like a playboy. "Fengjiu, what's wrong with Lao Bai?" Yijing walked up to Yijing. When she came back to her senses, she noticed that there was another man around. She nodded her head slightly and smiled faintly. "Yijing, you're here. Just in time. Come, sit." Fengjiu reached out and pulled her to sit on the grass. He smiled and introduced the two of them. "Yijing, this is my brother, Guanxilin. Brother, this is Yijing, my friend, the #1 beauty in the school." Guanxilin nodded at her and smiled. "Nice to meet you." Yijing was slightly startled. Seeing the smile on the young man's face, her heart skipped a beat. Her face blushed slightly. She tried her best to calm herself down before returning a gentle smile. "I often hear Fengjiu talk about you. I'm really surprised to meet you in person today."
Surprised?
You're different from what I imagined." She lowered her eyes slightly and smiled to hide the nervousness in her heart. She was indeed surprised. She thought that Fengjiu's brother would be the gentle and refined type. She never thought that he would be such an iron-blooded man. Although it was her first time meeting him, she had to admit that the man in front of her gave her a very strange feeling. Fengjiu looked at the two of them. Her eyes moved and she stood up with a smile. "Well, I just woke up and haven't washed up yet. You two go ahead and chat. I'll come back later." As she spoke, she took Lao Bai, who was lying beside Yijing, away to avoid disturbing the two of them. "Hey, Fengjiu." Yijing saw her leave and could not help but feel even more nervous. She remembered that she said she would introduce her to her brother. Did she tell her brother? Now that they were alone, she was at a loss for what to do, as she had never encountered such a situation before. Seeing her nervousness, Guanxilin was startled. He touched his chin and asked in confusion, "I shaved before coming out. Do I still look scary now?"
No.
She raised her head in a daze, and after meeting his smiling gaze, she hurriedly looked away. Seeing this, Guanxilin found it strange, but did not take it to heart. Instead, he smiled and asked, "Are you from Enchanting? Or from another country?" As the conversation progressed, Yijing gradually regained her usual calmness and gentleness. She realized that Guanxilin was quite knowledgeable. Listening to him talk about his experience with the mercenary group, the two of them gradually started chatting. When Fengjie saw this, he couldn't help but smile. She knew it. The two of them were a perfect match. It was good that they were chatting. She would take a nap before coming out. As he thought about it, he yawned and went back to his room to rest. It wasn't until noon that the two of them remembered that Tong Jiu had disappeared for half a day. Guanxilin smiled and stood up. Yi Jing, sit here for a while. I'll call Xiao Jiu, and we'll go to the stream on the other side of the mountain to eat grilled fish.
All right.
She nodded in response and watched as he walked towards the Immortal's cave without the enchantment. After about half an hour, Fengjie and Guanxilin finished washing up and walked out together. When she heard that they were going to the stream to catch fish, she was so excited that all her sleepiness disappeared without a trace. Chapter 708. In the evening, the three of them, who had been playing for almost a day, left at the fork in the road. Just as Fengjie was leading the three beasts to the cave, she saw a heaven-rank student wearing a spiritual academy uniform standing in front of her with his back facing her. Even though she was close to the three beasts, he had no intention of giving way. Seeing this, she couldn't help but raise her eyebrows. Excuse me? At this time, the man with his back facing her turned around. When their eyes met, a dark light flashed in their eyes. Fengjie rode on White's back and sized up the person in front of him. The uniform couldn't hide the sharp aura on his body, as well as the imposing manner of a superior. This person, even if he was a student of the academy, should be one of the top 3 Heaven's Prides. Not only did he have an outstanding appearance, he also had extraordinary strength and a superior background. This person was undoubtedly a Heaven's Pride. In the Academy of Stars and Clouds, other than Enchanting, there was only one other person who could have such an aura, the crown prince of a 6th-ranked country, Ouyang Xiao. Ouyang Xiao was the 2nd foundation establishment student in a 6-star academy. His strength was at the middle foundation establishment stage. Because Enchanting was at the late foundation establishment stage, he had always been suppressed by Enchanting and could only be ranked 2nd among the top 10 Heaven's Prides. To put it bluntly, he would always be 2nd place. While Fengjie was sizing up Ouyang Xiao was also sizing up the youth on the white horse. He was dressed in an inconspicuous academy robe, but it couldn't conceal his breathtaking elegance. The young man's immortal-like appearance was destined to attract attention wherever he went. However, what attracted his attention even more was the young man's temperament and his mysterious and bottomless clear eyes. He was obviously a 16-year-old youth, wearing an unremarkable uniform, but it couldn't hide his elegance. He sat on the white horse, his whole body emitting a lazy aura. His whole person seemed so indifferent, like a hedonistic son of a rich family. However, when the youth raised his eyes, those bottomless and mysterious eyes gave off a hidden pressure. With just a glance, it made his heart tremble. Was this young man named Fengjie really from a 9th-ranked country? This kind of figure, this kind of appearance, this kind of dazzling magnificence, how could he be an ordinary person? Fengjie? His voice rang out, low and stern. Ouyang Xiao. Fengjie raised his eyebrows. Ouyang Xiao's eyes narrowed. I've long heard of you. Same here. Fengjie's lips curled into a faint smile. He looked deeply at the young man on the horse, wanting to see through him. So, he said, 3 days later, I will wait for you on the storm platform. Without waiting for Fengjie to reply, he turned and left. In his opinion, someone like Fengjie would definitely come once he issued a challenge. But he still didn't understand Fengjie, and also underestimated Fengjie. He didn't know that Fengjie only listened to him and didn't even take it to heart. Looking at the departing figure, Fengjie's smile deepened. He patted White's head and said to the big black bear beside him, Little Black, let's go. 1 man and 3 beasts walked towards the cave residence. Chapter 709. The next morning. Xiao? After hearing the news, Guanxilin came over early with Yi Jing. The two of them had met on the road. Lao Bai walked over with an elegant horse stance and stood beside Yi Jing. He said to the two of them, "Master went to bed very late last night. She won't get up until noon today. She also soundproofed her room. She won't be able to hear you no matter how loudly you call her." "We heard that Ouyang Xiao challenged Xiaojiu. Where did you meet him yesterday?" Guan Shilin asked with a slight frown. "On the way back, Master said that if you came, you should go back. Don't worry, she didn't intend to accept the challenge." Lao Bai took a deep breath and smelled Yi Jing's pleasant scent. Yes, a woman smells good. Ouyang Xiao is a cultivator in the middle stage of the foundation establishment realm. His cultivation is the best among his peers. Among all the students in the academy, only Nie Tung can suppress him. If Fengjiu fights with him, I'm afraid. Yi Jing was a little worried. She felt that this matter might have been caused by her, so she felt uneasy. Guan Shilin was not worried that Fengjiu would not be a match for Ouyang Xiao because he knew her strength very well. Not to mention the students in the academy, even some of the teachers were no match for her. He just felt that it would not be a good thing for her to be constantly challenged here. It would definitely hinder her cultivation. If everyone came to challenge her, and anyone could challenge her, then how would she have so much time to cultivate and do her own things? "You should go back. Master is fine here. Don't worry." Lao Bai took a deep breath as he spoke, his face full of intoxication. Yi Jing did not know whether to laugh or cry. "Lao Bai, can you not be so lecherous?" He stood beside her and took a deep breath. Was she so pleasant to smell? "No, I like beautiful women, especially beautiful women with a beautiful heart." "Beauty Yi Jing, I've been wanting to tell you for a long time. You really smell good. Full of feminine fragrance." No, my legs are weak." Lao Bai had an intoxicated look on his face. As he spoke, he even lay down and pretended that his legs were weak. That despicable appearance and perverted expression made it hard for people to hate him, even if they wanted to. Guan Shilin glared at Lao Bai and was speechless. "Lao Bai, where did you learn to be so lecherous?" "Xiao Jiu wasn't a pervert either. Could it be your previous master?" "My previous master was an idiot, but he was also a good person. Otherwise, he wouldn't have given me to my Xiaojiu." Its mouth opened and closed as it spoke smoothly. As soon as it said Xiaojiu, its eyes suddenly lit up. "Ah. From now on, I'll call you Xiaojiu. It sounds really nice." Seeing this, the two of them helplessly shook their heads and smiled at each other. However, at this moment, the spiritual academy was in chaos. When Teacher Lu was giving a lecture to the students of the spiritual academy, he had a bad temper and scolded a student who was not doing well and was absent-minded, causing him to fall unconscious. When the students sent the teacher to the teaching office in a panic, Teacher Lu's body had already stiffened and he had lost consciousness. When the pharmacists of the medicinal academy and the academy's doctors received the news, they rushed to the teaching office and filled up a room. Chapter 710. When Director Lu saw the two of them, he hurriedly bowed and said, "It's like this. The students of the spiritual academy sent Director Lu here. They said that one of the students didn't learn how to use spiritual energy properly and was absent-minded. In the end, he was scolded by Director Lu. At that time, Director Lu was very angry and collapsed after a few words. He paused for a moment before continuing. I asked the pharmacists and doctors to check on him. They said that it was caused by the liver, but it was discovered too late. This caused his temper to become irritable and his blood to rush to his brain. It shouldn't be difficult to treat his internal organs, but now that the complications have flared up, it won't be easy to treat." "It's that serious?" The dean frowned and looked at Director Lu, who was lying motionless on the bed. Noticing the stiffness of his body, he asked, "Why do I feel like there's something wrong with his body?" The pharmacists couldn't find the cause, but the doctors said that it was his brain that caused his body to become paralyzed. However, our academy's doctors also said that there was no way to treat him. "We don't know what to do now." Director Lu's face was filled with worry and anxiety. Although Director Lu's temper wasn't very good, he was extremely serious about teaching. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been registered as a teacher in Nebula. Moreover, he had taught for more than 10 years in Nebula. Now that they saw him lying motionless on the bed without any consciousness, it made them feel uncomfortable. When the dean and vice dean heard this, their expressions turned grave. However, the two of them did not know anything about medicine and could not help much. Even though they had a few life-saving pills in their collection, those pills could only treat internal injuries. They had never encountered a problem with the body's liver function that affected the brain.
How about this?
Old Guan, go ask young Master Emochin to come take a look. He's proficient in pills. Perhaps he can see if there are any pills that Director Lu can use. The dean turned to the vice dean and ordered, "Okay, I'll go ask him now." The vice dean said and hurried out of the teaching office, heading towards Mo Chen's courtyard. On the bed in the teaching office, the pharmacists and two doctors were discussing Director Lu's condition. Some said that they might have to go out and invite a doctor with better medical skills to treat Director Lu, while others said that they would have to go to a fifth-ranked country to find one. Everyone was talking until they saw the vice director bring the white-clothed man to the teaching office. Only then did they all quiet down. Young Master Mo Chen. To these teachers and doctors, they had all heard of his name. His teacher was Mr. Tianji, and he was the only disciple of Mr. Tianji. It was said that he was proficient in alchemy. He could even concoct 6th-level pills. He was a rare genius in alchemy. Everyone stepped aside to let the vice president and Mo Chen enter. Inside, Mo Chen took Director Lu's pulse and checked his body. After a few breaths, he stood up and shook his head at the dean and vice president. He's not injured, he's sick. Pills can treat injuries, but to treat an illness, you have to find the root of the problem. I can't do anything about his situation. Even you can't do anything about it? The vice president's heart sank. Chapter 711. His words made everyone's hearts sink. Looking at the aura of death that enveloped Director Lu, the atmosphere in the office became heavy. Everyone was silent, not knowing what to say. Although Director Lu wasn't dead yet, he wasn't far from it. The aura of death on his body could be seen by all the cultivators present. His spiritual power was gradually weakening, like a flame drenched in rain, gradually becoming smaller and smaller. There were many cultivators in this world, so there were alchemists and pharmacists. However, there were very few doctors. In the eyes of cultivators, doctors were far less important than alchemists and pharmacists. This was because most doctors could only treat mortals. Cultivators rarely had any problems with their bodies. It was also because of this that there were even fewer doctors who were respected and trusted in the medical field. After all, true medical experts were extremely rare. At the very least, it was impossible for them to appear in a 6th-tier country like theirs. I wonder if you've heard of the ghost doctor? A doctor suddenly asked, looking at the crowd. If we can find the ghost doctor, I think Director Lu can be saved. However, the ghost doctor's whereabouts are mysterious. It's very difficult to find him. Plus, we only have 6 hours. Even if we can find him, it's too late. At the end, he sighed, shook his head, and walked out. It was as if he didn't say anything. How could they possibly find the ghost doctor in 6 hours? As far as he was concerned, Director Lu was beyond saving. If he was injured, cultivators like them might be able to save him with some life-saving elixirs and medicines. However, this illness was really going to take his life. It can be said that almost everyone in Qingting knows of the ghost doctor's name, but only a few people have seen him before. However, he has a good relationship with the people from the black market. He has appeared in Qingting Kingdom before, so perhaps the people from the black market know where he is now. The dean thought for a while, then said to the vice dean, Elder Guan, go take my order and ask the black market for help. Will it work? Even we have to be polite to the black market. I'm worried that even if they know, they won't reveal it. No matter what, we still have to go.
Go.
The head of the black market is on good terms with me. If he knows the whereabouts of the ghost doctor, he should be willing to help. The dean waved his hand, indicating for him to hurry. All right, I'll make a trip there. Elder Guan took the dean's identity token and hurried to the black market. Mo Chun, is there any way to prolong his life? Even if it's just for a day or a few hours, it's fine. The dean looked at Director Liu, who was lying on the bed, and sighed. I personally recruited this old Liu. He has been teaching students in Nebula for more than 10 years. He has always been a strict and serious instructor. I really don't want him to be like this. I can use my spiritual power to seal the life force in his body, stopping all the blood vessels and meridians in his body from circulating, causing him to fall into a state of suspended animation. However, it can only last for 4 hours. After 4 hours, he will still only have 6 hours left. Mo Chun said indifferently. His gaze swept over Director Liu, who was lying on the bed. To him, Director Liu was just a stranger. If it wasn't for the headmaster's repeated requests, he definitely wouldn't have opened his mouth. Chapter 7:12. Hearing this, Mo Chun didn't say anything else and walked up to the bedside. He raised his hand, and a wave of spiritual energy visible to the naked eye surged. In the next moment, he quickly sealed several major acupuncture points on Instructor Liu's body. At that moment, the aura on Instructor Liu's body suddenly disappeared, as if he had died. He didn't even breathe. This scene caused the hearts of the surrounding instructors to freeze. Just as they were about to open their mouths to ask what had happened, they saw young Master Mo Chun wave his sleeves and turn to leave. At the same time, he left behind an indifferent sentence. Before that, don't touch him. Everyone watched as his figure disappeared from the teaching area. They couldn't help but look at the dean. The dean stepped forward to take a look, and his wise eyes moved slightly. Using spiritual energy to seal all the major acupuncture points on his body, other than having an extremely accurate knowledge of the acupuncture points, one also needed to have a strong spiritual energy. Just these 4 hours of fake death had consumed a lot of Mo Chun's spiritual energy. The dean looked at Instructor Liu lying on the bed and couldn't help but sigh. He slowly said, cultivators don't find it scary to get injured. The scariest thing is to get sick without knowing it. His illness came so fiercely and without any warning. It could really take his life at any time. The dean said this out of regret. However, these words were like a thunderclap in Instructor Liu's ears, shaking his heart. Suddenly, he remembered something from 2 days ago. Recalling the scene from 2 days ago and looking at today's events, Instructor Liu couldn't help but wipe away the sweat on his forehead. He couldn't hide the disbelief on his face. Director Liu, what's wrong? The dean noticed that something was wrong with his expression and asked. Hearing the dean's voice, Instructor Liu swallowed and looked at him, saying, Dean, I suddenly remembered something very important. What is it? That two days ago, because Bai Ruofei slandered Fengjiu and Yi Jing, we called them to the teaching area. At that time, Instructor Liu pointed at them and flew into a rage. At that time, what happened at that time? The dean asked in a low voice.
Oh.
I remember now. At that time, Fengjiu scolded him for being crazy. One of the instructors said. The other person shook his head when he heard this.
No.
His tone didn't sound like he was scolding. It sounded more like a reminder. Yes, we didn't notice it at that time and we didn't think of it before. It was only when the director mentioned it that I remembered. At that time, Fengjiu said to Director Liu, Mentor, you're sick, you need to be treated. Director Liu gulped and paused for a moment before continuing. At the time, the atmosphere wasn't too pleasant. We all thought that he was just speaking in a fit of anger, but I just remembered that Fengjiu said that he would collapse within 3 days. Hearing this, the dean's heart trembled, and his eyes narrowed. You mean he already saw that there was a problem with Director Liu's health 3 days ago? Yes, that's what I think. I was thinking, since he studied alchemy, could he also be proficient in medicine? Instructor Liu looked at the dean and asked. However, when he thought of this, he felt that it wasn't very likely. Fengjiu was the only student in the alchemy department, and he was also a heaven-rank student. If he also had medical skills, then this youth was too heaven-defying. Where is Fengjiu now? The dean immediately asked. If he's not in the spiritual department, then he's naturally in the alchemy department. Instructor Lu replied. Chapter 713. Yes, I'll immediately send someone to bring him here, Director Lu said as he quickly went outside and called for 2 students from the Spiritual Academy to quickly go to the alchemy department to find Fengjiu. Due to the news of Director Lu fainting, the teachers and students of the Spiritual Academy and the Profound Academy heard about it. Even the Medicine Peak knew that a teacher was on the brink of death due to the arrival of several alchemists. However, in the nearly sealed alchemy department, Fengjiu's cave was located a few mountains away from the alchemy peak. Not to mention, Fengjiu was still sleeping in the cave and had no idea about what was happening outside. Guan Xilin and Yi Jing sat outside the cave, chatting as they waited for Fengjiu to wake up. Because the barrier around the cave wasn't opened, they couldn't enter and couldn't hear their shouts, so they could only wait outside. Because the 2 of them came early in the morning, they naturally didn't know that the Spiritual Academy and the Profound Academy were spreading the news of Director Lu's death. Until 2 students from the Spiritual Academy rushed over on a crane. When they saw the 2 people chatting under the tree, they couldn't help but be startled. They looked at each other and walked forward. Senior Sister Yi Jing. The 2 of them called out as their gazes fell on the man in the Profound Academy's uniform. After sizing him up, one of them came to the front of the cave and shouted, Fengjiu. Fengjiu, come out quickly, Director Lu is looking for you. Hearing that, Yi Jing and Guan Xilin were startled. After looking at each other, Yi Jing asked, what's going on? Why are you looking for Fengjiu again? Fengjiu, Fengjiu, come out quickly, Director Lu is looking for you. The student shouted loudly, his voice filled with spiritual energy. If Fengjiu didn't set up a soundproof barrier, it would have been fine. But now that the cave was soundproof, no matter how loudly they shouted, the person sleeping inside couldn't hear them. Seeing that there was no movement for a long time, the 2 of them turned to Yi Jing and said, Senior Sister Yi Jing, Teacher Lu wants Fengjiu to go to the teaching area immediately. Where is he? Or, did he go out? Why hasn't there been any response after we've called for so long? She's in her cave dwelling, but there's a soundproof enchantment around her cave dwelling. The sounds from the outside can't be heard. I heard from her beasts that she slept very late last night. I reckon that she won't wake up until noon today, at the earliest. Until noon? The faces of the 2 students changed.
How can we do that?
This matter can't wait. What can't wait? Guan Xilin asked, frowning slightly as he looked at the 2 students whose expressions had changed slightly. Instructor Lu can't wait any longer. Mentor Lu is dying. Director Lu said that Fengjiu might be able to save him. He asked us to quickly call him over. The 2 students spoke. They didn't really believe that Fengjiu could save Director Lu. After all, he was just a new student. How could he save someone who couldn't even be saved by a pharmacist and a doctor? It was probably because Instructor Lu and the others had no other choice that they came up with the idea of making a Hail Mary effort. When the Dean and Director Lu were talking, they were standing guard outside. They also heard the sounds inside and came to call Fengjiu over. It seemed that 2 days ago, Fengjiu said that Director Lu was sick and needed to be treated. For some reason, they thought of looking for Fengjiu. Who knew that when they came here, Fengjiu actually set up a soundproof barrier in the cave dwelling. How despicable. Chapter 714. He collapsed when he was scolding in class. His condition is very serious. Yao Feng's teacher went over, as did the academy's doctor. Even that young master, Mo. Chun, went over. They all said that he can't be saved. One of the students said anxiously, Director Lu told us to look for Fengjiu immediately, but what should we do now that he has set up a soundproof barrier? Fengjiu doesn't have any medical skills. There's no point in looking for him. Could it be that the principal and the vice principal didn't care? With their connections, they should be able to find a highly skilled doctor in Enchanting country. Why did they come to look for Fengjiu? Yi Jing frowned as she spoke. Thinking about how Director Lu's life was in danger, she couldn't help but say to Guan Xilin, Director Lu is also my teacher. I owe him a debt of gratitude for his guidance. I have to rush back to take a look. With that, she left hurriedly without waiting for Guan Xilin to speak. Guan Xilin watched Yijing leave and turned to look at the two anxious students. His eyes moved slightly as he asked, even the doctor and Yao Feng's teacher can't save him. Why did they come to look for Fengjiu? Xiao Jiu's identity as the ghost doctor should be unknown to the people in the academy. Fengjiu said that Director Liu would collapse within 3 days. I didn't think that his crow's beak would be right. Look, Director Liu told us to look for him,
one of them said.
Seeing that waiting here wasn't a solution, he hurriedly left to report that they couldn't enter the cave abode. Even their voices couldn't be heard. At the teaching area.
What?
You didn't see him? You can't even enter the cave abode? Director Liu glared and scolded. If you can't enter the cave abode, don't you know how to shout? What a waste of breath. The two students hurriedly said, we shouted, but that guy even set up a soundproof barrier when he slept. Our voices couldn't be heard. Hearing this, not only was Director Liu stunned, even the few teachers who came out with him widened their eyes in shock. What the hell is Fengjiu doing? He even has to set up a soundproof barrier when he sleeps? Why? Why is his habit so different from others? I heard from her that she has a bad temper when she wakes up. She didn't get enough sleep and was in a bad mood. In addition, she should have gone to bed very late last night. She didn't want to be disturbed today, so she must have set up that soundproof barrier. I just didn't expect this to happen to Director Liu. Yijing walked over and said. She had just gone in to see Director Liu, and the director had said that he could only be stabilized for a few hours. Once the time was up, if no one could save him, then he might really. I'll go take a look. As Director Liu spoke, he decided to personally make a trip there. Thus, he let two students lead the way and quickly headed towards Fengjiu's cave residence. At the same time, the vice head who had hurried to the black market had sped up his pace. As soon as he stepped into the black market's main entrance, his aura became slightly unstable. After handing over the dean's token, he was invited inside. Not long after, the black market's president walked out with a smile. Vice Academy head, what brings you here? He waved his hand, gesturing for the servants to serve tea. After old Guan stabilized his breath, he cupped his hands and said, President Gong, please forgive me for my hasty visit. I have something to ask of you.
Oh?
Something to ask of me? Ha ha ha, Vice Academy, head Guan really knows how to joke. The School of Stars and Clouds is such a powerful force. Why would they need the black market's help? The black market's president chuckled and took a sip of tea. Chapter 7:15. Hearing this, President Gong, who was sipping his tea, paused, a trace of surprise flashing through his eyes. Looking towards the anxious Vice Academy head Guan, he asked, Vice Academy head Guan, why have you thought of looking for the ghost doctor? To tell you the truth, President Gong, one of our academy's teachers suddenly fell to the ground and couldn't get up. His life is in danger, and the academy's pharmacists, alchemists, and doctors can't do anything about it. Thus, I thought of the ghost doctor's famous name. It's said that her medical skills can even bring the dead back to life. Out of desperation, our headmaster ordered me to inquire about the ghost doctor's whereabouts. Our black market's relationship with the ghost doctor is indeed unusual. However, she has also instructed us not to reveal her whereabouts. This Gong is truly unable to help with Vice Academy head Guan's request. He shook his head and continued, besides, distant water can't put out a nearby fire. You'd better find another doctor. President Gong, this is a human life. Please, President Gong, help us. The vice president stood up and bowed respectfully. Seeing this, President Gong sighed lightly. It's not that I don't want to help, but that I can't. As the president of the black market, I naturally have to be responsible for the black market. With her position in our black market, even if I see her, I have to obediently bow and not do anything offensive. You don't understand the ghost doctor. She saves people based on her preferences. Even if you find her, so what? You'll only be wasting your energy. Besides, since the higher-ups have instructed us to keep her information confidential, we can't reveal it to the outside world. President Gong walked out, but just as he was about to step out of the hall, he paused and turned back to look at Vice Academy head Guan, saying meaningfully, if you want to save someone, why should you give up what's near and seek what's far away? Hearing this, Vice Academy head Guan's expression froze, and he couldn't help but stop in his tracks. Hearing President Gong's meaningful words before leaving, he couldn't help but mutter in a low voice, if you want to save someone, why should you give up what's near and seek what's far away? Give up what's near? Give up what's near. What does he mean? Give up what's near and seek what's far away near. A thought suddenly flashed through his mind. His expression changed as he whispered, could it be that it's in their academy? He had given up on going to the nearest place and instead came here to ask. If there really was a solution, then this was the only solution. However, most of the people in their academy had already tried. Could it be that there was someone else who had the ability to do so? Although he was puzzled, he did not dare to delay and quickly headed to the academy. Just as he walked out of the black market, President Gong walked out with a smile. At this moment, a question came from beside him. President, why did you reveal the ghost doctor's whereabouts to him? An old man appeared beside him and asked doubtfully. I only said that there's no need to seek the farthest. If he can really guess it, it's his ability. As he spoke, there was a hint of laughter in his voice, and he continued, I just feel that it's very interesting. The ghost doctor has already become a student of their academy, yet they don't know about it, and even came to the black market to look for her. Hee, how interesting. At the same time, in front of Feng Jiu's cave house, Guide Lu launched a series of spirit force attacks, but he couldn't break the barrier. He couldn't help but stare. He was embarrassed, ashamed, and anxiously cursed while gritting his teeth. Chapter 716. The cave residences of the alchemy department were indeed protected by a barrier, but the barrier was not that strong. Even an Oris core stage teacher like him couldn't open the enchantment here. Just how angry was he? In addition to the 2 students who followed him, some other heaven-grade students also followed. At this time, when they saw that Director Lu could not break the barrier even after several attacks, they could not help but be dumbfounded. Feng Jiu actually had the ability to strengthen the barrier to such an extent? Even Director Lu, who was in the multiple core stage, could not open it? Seeing that the barrier was almost immovable, the corners of their mouths twitched. They also wanted to ask, is this to prevent thieves? Or to prevent assassinations? In fact, Feng Jiu did not want to prevent anything. He strengthened the barrier because he was afraid that her alchemy would be too loud and spread out. As for the soundproof barrier, it was only because she wanted to have a good sleep without being disturbed. Who would have thought that these people would come looking for her so early in the morning?
Boom.
Bang, bang, bang. Rumbling sounds of impact could be heard from time to time. When the surrounding students saw that Director Lu was sweating profusely and panting, they could not help but look at each other. One of them stepped forward and cautiously suggested, Lu, Director Lu? The barrier could not be opened, and he was embarrassed. When he thought about how Director Lu was waiting there and his life was in danger, he suddenly became angry. When he saw the student step forward, he immediately shouted angrily, What are you doing? The student shrank his shoulders and said, Director Lu, why don't we ask the dean to come over? Director Lu's face turned red, and he glared at the cave residence that was not moving at all. He flicked his sleeves and said, I'll go by myself. As soon as he finished speaking, he quickly went to the teaching office and did not dare to delay. Guan Shilin, who had called the big black bear and Lao Bai to sit under a tree not far away, glanced at the leaving figure of the teacher. His eyes moved slightly, and no one knew what he was thinking. Director Lu, who hurried back to the teaching office, found the dean with a red face. Dean, that brat not only set up a soundproof barrier when he slept, he also strengthened the barrier of the cave residence. I can't break his barrier. Hearing this, the dean was slightly surprised. He strengthened the barrier? And even you can't break it? He was shocked in his heart. How could a mere student be so capable? Director Lu was a gold core stage cultivator, but he could not even break a student's barrier. I'll go take a look. You stay here. The dean instructed, and under the guidance of the student, he went to Fengjiu's cave residence. When he arrived at the cave abode, his gaze swept past the many spiritual academy, profound academy, and students surrounding the cave abode. His gaze landed on the big black bear and the strange horse under the tree. These are Fengjiu's pet beasts. Just as he was looking at the strange horse, he suddenly saw the strange horse of an unknown breed grin at him, revealing a row of horse teeth. His wise gaze moved slightly. After he glanced at the strange horse, his gaze turned and landed on the student wearing the Xian Academy's uniform. He didn't break the cave's barrier first, but instead walked towards him. You must be Guan Shilin, Fengjiu's elder brother. The dean spoke with certainty, and a smile appeared on his face. Guan Shilin glanced at the dean, stood up, and bowed respectfully. Guan Shilin greets the dean. Since you are Fengjiu's elder brother, you should know if he knows medicine, right? The dean looked at him and asked. Chapter 7:17. On a nearby hill, Mo Chun, who had already left the teaching office, heard that Director Liu and the others had come looking for Fengjiu, but could not meet him. They said that the barrier had been strengthened and a soundproof barrier had been set up. He was surprised and came over to take a look. He did not expect to see the dean here as well. Why did he not want that youth? Could it be that the youth knew medicine? His gaze shifted and fell on the man in the Xian Academy uniform. Was this the youth's sworn brother, Guan Shilin? Hearing the dean's question, he watched quietly. Since he was the youth's brother, he should know very well whether the youth knew medicine or not. If he said that the youth did not know medicine, perhaps there was no need to break the barrier. However, even if he knew medicine, Director Liu's condition was too serious. How could a youth like him save him? Under the tree, the dean did not rush him. He looked calmly at Guan Shilin and waited for his answer. Guan Shilin also looked at him. After a long silence, he said in a low voice, compared to whether he knows medicine or not, I think the dean should be more concerned about whether he will save Director Liu or not. Hearing this, the dean's heart shook. The hidden meaning of his words caused waves to surge in his heart. He was extremely shocked. He understood what Guan Shilin meant. Instead of asking whether Fengjiu knew medicine, they should be more worried about whether he would save Director Liu. If he saved Director Liu, then he knew medicine. If he did not want to save Director Liu, then he only needed to say that he did not know medicine from the beginning to the end. None of them had thought about this problem. They only found out that Fengjiu knew that there was a problem with Director Liu's health 2 days ago. First, she sent a student to call him over. Then, Director Liu came over to break the barrier to call him over. Now, Fengjiu came over personally to call him over. They took all of this for granted. They took it 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 for granted. As long as they said something, Fengjiu would have no choice but to obey in an instant, he understood. While he was shocked, he was also shocked. If it weren't for the young man's reminder, even if they broke the barrier and woke Fengjiu up, Fengjiu might not have helped them. Thinking of this, he took a deep look at Guan Shilin, cupped his hands, and bowed deeply. Thank you. He thanked him for his reminder. It was his words that had enlightened him. Guan Shilin looked at the director and slightly leaned to the side to receive half of his salute. At the same time, he returned the salute. I wouldn't dare. When the surrounding people saw the dean bow to the young man under the tree, they all widened their eyes in shock. They looked at the scene in disbelief and felt that this scene was so unreal. Not far away, on the mountaintop, Mo Chen's eyes flickered when he heard their conversation. He did not leave. He only stood there quietly and looked at the cave abode. He looked at the dean who was standing under the tree and had no intention of breaking the barrier. At the same time, when the vice director rushed back to the teaching office and heard Director Liu's words, a thought flashed through his mind. His heart shook as he remembered the rumors about the ghost doctor. The ghost doctor, dressed in red, a handsome young man, he then remembered the words of the black market president. To save a life, there was no need to give up what was near at hand and seek what was far away. The vice director only felt a huge boom in his mind. It was as if a bolt of lightning had exploded in his mind. His mind went blank. It's him. It's him. It's him. Chapter 7:18. When all the surrounding students looked at the principal, who was standing quietly under the tree, wondering why he hadn't broken the barrier to call Fingju out, they heard a surprised and excited voice come from afar. Principal. Principal, I know. It's him, it's him. The vice head's figure was like a flash of light, instantly arriving in front of the principal. He was about to speak when he saw the principal raise his hand and set up a soundproof barrier. What do you mean it's him? Didn't I tell you to go to the black market and inquire about the ghost doctor? Is there any news? The principal asked. Because of the soundproof barrier, other than Guan Shilin standing next to him, no one else could hear their conversation. When Guan Shilin heard this, he glanced at the dean and then at the excited vice director. Then he lowered his gaze. It's him, it's Fingjiu. He's the ghost doctor. He should be the ghost doctor. The vice head said excitedly, grabbing the principal's arm, full of excitement. I told you, he's not simple, right? Not only is his spiritual energy cultivation outstanding, his talent is outstanding, and he can refine pills. Most importantly, he's actually the ghost doctor. The ghost doctor is a pharmacist. It's said that his medicine has already reached the level of a medicine saint. Now that such a genius is actually a student of our academy, how did such a good thing fall into our Xingyan Academy's lap? When he reached the end of his speech, he was obviously a little too excited and spoke incoherently. He didn't know what he was saying, but there was only one piece of information reverberating in his mind. Feng Jiu, that red-clothed youth that he had taken a fancy to, was actually the renowned ghost doctor. Hearing this, the principal's heart trembled. He instinctively looked at Guan Shilin next to him, and when he saw the calmness on his face, he knew that the vice head was telling the truth. There was no need to confirm or ask, just looking at Guan Shilin was enough. He was Fengjiu's older brother, so he naturally knew about Fengjiu's matters. In addition to his previous reminder, at this moment, there was no doubt that Fengjiu was the ghost doctor. Only, he had never expected that the person he was looking for would be someone from their academy. What was even more unexpected was that this student who had always lived in seclusion and had a cheeky smile on his face, giving others the impression that he was lazy, leisurely, and kind and easy to bully, was actually that famous ghost doctor. No one knew just how shaken his heart was at this moment. No one knew just how great the fluctuations in his heart were at this moment. At this moment, he understood even more why Guan Shilin had reminded him of that sentence. If it was just a normal student, they wouldn't have cared at all, but if it was the phantom doctor, then the consequences would be dire. The excited vice headmaster saw that the headmaster was slightly startled, as if he was in a daze. He immediately called out, "Headmaster? Dean? Can't you hear me? Old Guan, you're not young anymore. You need to think twice before doing anything. What will the students and instructors think of you if you make such a big fuss all the way here?" The dean calmed himself down and looked at the vice head. "Old Guan, you're not young anymore. You need to think twice before doing anything. I'm not agitated. Even if you're agitated, you need to know your limits," the headmaster said in a low voice. Hearing the headmaster's low voice, the vice headmaster finally calmed down. He had been too agitated before to notice, but now he felt that something wasn't right. Chapter 7:19. Hearing his words, the dean slowly exhaled. His wise eyes fell on the cave as he slowly said, "I'll wait here."
Wait?
The vice dean was startled. "We can wait, but Director Liu can't. How about this? I'll go call him. This is a matter of life and death. In the past, it would have been fine, but this concerns the life of a teacher. We can't wait." As soon as he finished speaking, he took a step forward, but was stopped by the dean. "If I say wait, then wait. Whether or not he lives will depend on Director Liu's luck." But the vice dean turned back to look at the dean's serious face and the expressionless Guan Shilin. He really didn't know why they had to wait. Seeing this, the dean sighed. Old Guan. Who did you say he was? The ghost doctor. Fengjiu is the ghost doctor. At this point, his eyes lit up again. However, as soon as he finished speaking, he seemed to have remembered something. His expression gradually changed from excitement to calmness. At this moment, he finally understood the dean's meaning. Yes, Fengjiu was the ghost doctor. The ghost doctor wasn't someone they could ask to do whatever they wanted. So what if he was in their academy? From what he knew, the ghost doctor had an eccentric personality. He did everything as he pleased. If he didn't admit it and didn't want to save someone, then there was no point in their enthusiasm. If they wanted to ask him to save someone, then they couldn't treat him as a student of the academy. They had to treat him as the ghost doctor and give him the respect he deserved. Otherwise, things would only backfire. Also, since he had entered their academy, he didn't want his identity as the ghost doctor to be exposed. If they exposed his identity, he was afraid, thinking of this and how he had been shouting excitedly the entire way. He couldn't help but wipe away his cold sweat. He had experienced Fengjiu's eccentric temper before. That was close at this moment. He calmed his emotions and glanced at the dean. Then his gaze fell on Guan Xilin, who hadn't said anything. He smiled and asked Xilin, Fengjiu is sleeping inside? Hearing this, Guan Xilin glanced at him and nodded.
Yes.
Oh, so it's like that. How long does he usually sleep before waking up? Director Liu only had a few hours. If Fengjiu fell asleep like this, then it's hard to say. He shook his head and didn't say anything else. Then, let's wait, he said with a sigh. He stood next to the dean and looked at the Immortal's cave. Everyone was dumbfounded when they saw the vice president standing there. Wasn't he here to call Fengjiu? Why didn't the dean and the vice dean break the barrier and let people in to call him out? What the hell is going on? Yijing also came over. However, when she saw the strange scene, her heart skipped a beat. Her gaze also fell on the cave. 2 hours passed, and there was still no movement from the dean and the ghost doctor. 4 hours passed, and there was still no movement. Everyone gradually became restless and began to discuss in low voices. Excluding the previous time, there were less than 4 hours left. Even the ghost doctor couldn't help but feel anxious, but there was nothing he could do. He could only hope that Fengjiu would wake up quickly and leave the cave. Chapter 720. The Vice Academy head was anxious and didn't pay much attention to him. What is it? He asked. What is it? Guan Xilin looked at him and asked, May I borrow the Vice Academy head's warrant for a moment? The Vice Academy head was startled. He glanced at Guan Xilin, then looked at the dean. After the dean nodded, the Vice Academy head handed the warrant to Guan Xilin. What do you need the warrant for? Guan Xilin took the warrant, and a smile finally appeared on his stiff face. He didn't answer. Instead, he bowed to the two of them, then called Yijing and quickly left. What is he trying to do? The Vice Academy had frowned as he watched the two of them leave. You'll find out soon enough. With that, the dean retracted his gaze and looked at the quiet Immortal's cave. He couldn't help but sigh inwardly. This Fengjiu was too good at sleeping. After the time it takes half an incense stick to burn, the crowd saw Guan Xilin and Yijing return. They were carrying things in their hands, and behind them were several students who were helping them carry the items. Under the puzzled gazes of the crowd, Guan Xilin ordered the students to place the items in front of the Immortal's cave's barrier. He even set up a stove and heated up a pot of spirit chicken ginseng soup. Not only that, but when the lids of the other items were removed, the crowd couldn't help but stare with wide eyes. There was a thin meat bun filled with soup, a roasted spirit chicken, and a large leg of spirit pork being roasted over the fire. The sight of it caused the crowd to drool. What are they doing? Are they hungry? How can they get food from the ovens? That's food for the instructors. How can they bring so much food here? That's right. Furthermore, is it really appropriate to eat here at this time of the day? The students were all talking amongst themselves, and even some of the instructors were furious. However, since the dean and the vice-chancellor hadn't said anything, they couldn't say anything. After all, they had seen the vice-chancellor give Guanxilin a warrant. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to enter the ovens. Seeing the scene in front of the cave residents and the man named Guanxilin placing the steaming hot delicacies in front of the barrier, Mo Qin, who was standing at the top of a mountain not far away, smiled. So that was the case. The dean and vice-dean were silent at this moment. They thoughtfully looked at Guanxilin as he fanned himself with the fan. When they saw him sending the aroma of the food into the barrier, they were startled for a moment before their eyes lit up. So that's how it was. Was he trying to wake up the Fengjiu in the cave with the smell of food? However, would this work? The two of them couldn't help but feel suspicious. However, in the space of a few breaths, their suspicions turned into astonishment and joy. Fengjiu was awakened by hunger. As her stomach rumbled, she lazily turned over. As she was half asleep, a faint aroma of meat drifted in. She sniffed it. It smells so good. She thought she must be dreaming, because her cave residents, or even the entire mountain, couldn't smell the aroma of food. And so, she turned over again, this time facing the outside. Smelling the aroma of meat, she fell asleep contentedly. However, as the aroma grew stronger and stronger, to the point where she could even name the food, her stomach rumbled even louder. She suddenly opened her eyes and took a deep breath. She stared blankly for a moment, then jumped up. With her hair in a mess, she threw on her clothes and rushed outside. Chapter 7:21. Before anyone could see him, his voice rang out from within the immortal's cave. Even as everyone outside stared in astonishment, a figure shot out like a bolt of lightning, opened the immortal's cave's enchantment, and charged toward the delicacies. Big bro, you didn't go to the ovens to steal, did you? Fengjiu looked at the delicious food in front of her in surprise. She didn't feel sleepy anymore. She only had eyes for the food in front of her. She couldn't help but reach out to pick up a thin-skinned meat bun with soup. However, before her hand could touch the meat bun, she was stopped by her brother. Big bro, what are you doing? She asked, glaring at him. Go wash up, change your clothes, and then come out to eat. With that, Guanxilin gestured for her to look around her. In his heart, he felt both helpless and sympathetic. How badly had Xiaoju starved? All she could see was the food. Didn't she notice that everyone around her was staring at her? After his reminder, Fengjiu raised her eyes and looked around. She couldn't help but be a little dumbfounded. The students and instructors of the various academies were all looking at her as if they had seen a ghost. She couldn't help but feel puzzled at the same time. Big bro, she said, her voice low. All I did was take a nap. How come I'm surrounded by so many people when I wake up? Don't tell me they caught you stealing something from the ovens? She leaned closer to Guanxilin and asked in a hushed voice. When he heard this, Guanxilin didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Don't talk nonsense. Go wash up and then come out. The food won't taste good if it gets cold. As soon as the words left his mouth, Fengjiu, who had been next to him just a moment ago, responded with a grunt. Then, like a gust of wind, she rushed into the immortal's cave. Her speed left everyone speechless. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they would have found it hard to believe that the young man with a head of disheveled hair and a sleepy expression was the same elegant, handsome young man from before. Who would have thought? Who would have thought that they would see such a side of him? But what kind of sense of smell did he have? And how much did he love food? They had been shouting outside for so long, and had blasted the enchantment so many times. They had waited for so long, but he hadn't woken up. Who would have thought that in the end, he would be awakened by the aroma of the delicious food? It really made them speechless. At this time, the dean and the vice-dean's eyes fell on Guanxilin. Once again, they felt that not only was Fengjiu not simple, but the people around him were also not simple. Guanxilin was no pushover either. With the temptation of delicious food, Fengjie washed up several times faster than usual. When she came out again, she was back to the elegant young man everyone saw in the past. She didn't care about the crowd. She took the chopsticks from Guan Xilin and ate a steamed pork bun and soup. She asked, "Brother, what are they doing?" Yi Jing scooped a bowl of spirit chicken ginseng soup for her and said, "Drink the soup first. Don't burn yourself."
Thank you.
Fengjie smiled at her, took a spoonful, and slowly drank it. He picked up a shrimp dumpling and said vaguely, "You guys eat too? I'm embarrassed to eat alone." Although he said that, everyone looked at the way he was eating and didn't feel that he was embarrassed at all. On the mountaintop not far away, Emochin glanced at the young man who was stuffing his face with food. He couldn't help but smile, shook his head, and turned to leave. Chapter 722. Fengjie. The dean walked up to her and called out, "Dean, would you like to sit down and eat with us?" She raised her head to look at the dean in front of her. She was puzzled. Why would they treat her to such a feast? If her brother had brought this food back from the ovens, then there shouldn't be so many people gathered around her. Could something have happened? No need. He smiled, then his expression turned serious. "Actually, we came here to ask you to save Director Liu. As long as you're willing to save him, we can discuss any conditions you have." Hearing this, Fengjie paused in the middle of eating. "Director Liu?" He collapsed. As she spoke, she stuffed more food into her mouth. In her mind, she was thinking, so it's because of this. But why did they think of coming to find her? Just because she reminded them that day? Guan Xilin cut the roasted meat for her as he said, "Yes. I heard that Instructor Liu collapsed during class. The Academy's pharmacists and doctors all went to see him. He's in a critical condition. He's been notified that he won't live for more than a few hours. Right now, he only has 4 hours left." Fengjie drank half a bowl of chicken soup. Her eyes flashed, but she didn't say anything. She just listened. Guan Xilin told Fengjie the gist of what had happened. In the end, he said, "I saw the dean and the others waiting outside for 4 hours, so I took the vice dean's order and went to the ovens to bring you some food." Hearing this, Fengjie more or less understood what had happened. She put down the bowl in her hand and wiped her mouth. She looked at the dean and the vice dean. "So you two know?" She didn't say what they knew, but she knew that they understood. "Don't worry, we won't mention anything else. Even if he cured Director Liu, everyone would only know that he had medical skills. They wouldn't associate him with the ghost doctor. After all, no one would have thought that the ghost doctor would come to their academy. But even if they knew that the ghost doctor had the ability to bring the dead back to life, Director Liu's situation was also unusual. Would he be able to save him? I'll go take a look first." She stood up and said, "We have to see how the situation is before we know whether he can be saved or not. Time is limited, so let's not waste any more time." As she spoke, she took off Flying Feather from her waist and threw it into the air. She then sat on Flying Feather and headed to the teaching office. And the dean and vice dean hurriedly followed her. After they left, Yi Jing looked at Guan Xilin and asked, "Fengjie, do you really have a way?" Little Nine said that it depends on the situation. He gave some of the roasted meat to Lao Bai, the cloud-swallowing beast, and the big black bear. As for the spirit chicken ginseng soup, he brought it into Fengjie's cave, intending to give it to her to nourish her body.
2.
Okay. Yi Jing nodded and walked with him. When they arrived at the teaching office, Fengjie walked in under Director Liu's angry glare. She went to the bed where Director Liu was lying and carefully examined his condition. His cerebral vessels are damaged and his brain is bleeding. It's quite serious, she said calmly as she unbuttoned his clothes and checked his liver. Chapter 723. Hearing this, Fengjie's eyes flickered, revealing a smile. "I can save him, and saving his life shouldn't be a problem, but it's hard to say how well he'll recover. We can guarantee a cure, but we can't guarantee a good recovery." As long as he can keep his life, the rest will depend on his own luck. As the director spoke, he looked at Fengjiu and asked, "How do we save him? Do we need any spiritual medicine or something?" Well, her voice trailed off as the corners of her lips curled. She looked at the director and said, "If we want to save him, we'll have to clean up the blood in his brain first, so I'll have to make a hole in his head to clean up the congealed blood clots. I don't need any spiritual medicine at the moment, but I'll need 2 assistants. Director, call those 2 doctors in to help me." Hearing this, not only was the vice director stunned, even the director was stunned. His eyes were filled with disbelief. Make a hole in his head? Will this work? He had never heard of a hole in the head. The head was fragile and fatal, so how could she make a hole in it? This wasn't a joke, right? Time is limited. Have those 2 doctors change into clean clothes, wash their hands, and bring them in. Fengjiu ignored the 2 stunned people and said to the dumbfounded teacher Lu, "Please have someone bring in some clean water." However, no one responded to her words, nor did anyone move. She couldn't help but frown as she looked at the director and vice director. Are we saving this person or not? If not, I'm leaving. Hearing this, the 3 people in the room suddenly came back to their senses. Before the director and vice director could speak, they heard teacher Lu ask in disbelief, "Make a hole in his head? Can this person still live?" Hearing this, Fengjiu raised her eyebrows. "Doubting my medical skills? Since you don't believe me, why did you call me here?" She had originally planned to change her clothes, but her expression turned cold as she turned to leave. Doubting a doctor's medical skills was an insult to them. It wasn't like she had to save someone. Since they didn't believe her, why should she stay? Seeing Fengjiu turn to leave with a cold face, the director and vice director came back to their senses. Thinking of his identity as the ghost doctor, their hearts trembled as they hurriedly chased after him. "Fengjiu, we believe you. If we didn't believe you, we wouldn't have asked you to save him." The vice director blocked Fengjiu and smiled apologetically. Teacher Lu, don't take her words to heart. It's not that we don't believe you, but we've never heard of this kind of treatment method, so we're a bit scared." "That's right, Fengjiu. Time is of the essence. Please treat Director Lu as soon as possible." The dean also spoke, apologizing for their previous hesitation and doubt. "Teacher Lu means Teacher Lu," Teacher Lu said. "Teachers, Fengjiu S. Teacher." Seeing the director and vice director like this, Teacher Lu knew she had said the wrong thing. She walked in front of Fengjiu and bowed to him. She said apologetically, "I was only worried about old Lu. I didn't mean anything else. If my words made you angry, I apologize."
I'm sorry.
Fengjiu's eyes moved slightly. He didn't think that Teacher Lu would apologize so quickly. Chapter 724. Hearing this, Fengjiu, who was still a bit angry, burst into laughter. She glanced at the vice head, who was standing in front of her, and said with a faint smile, "Vice head, you're quite a fast learner." There's nothing I can do about it. Don't you like good food? There are plenty of delicacies in the ovens that you can't eat outside." The vice head laughed awkwardly. He hadn't expected that there would be a day when he'd have to use good food to keep someone here. "All right then. Hurry up and call him in." She turned and walked back inside. Actually, she hadn't wanted to leave the moment Director Lu apologized. Although she didn't have much contact with Director Lu, she had heard from the academy's students and teachers that he was a strict and serious person. Seeing such a serious teacher become like this, she really couldn't say that she would stand by and do nothing. What's more, Director Lu had apologized to her. She had no reason to throw away her responsibility and leave. When they saw Fengjiu return, they were delighted. They hurriedly called over 2 doctors and gave them instructions. Only then did they have them change into new clothes and go in to assist Fengjiu. At that moment, Guan Shilin and Yi Jing also arrived outside. However, they weren't allowed to approach the teaching area. In the teaching office, Feng Jiayu changed her clothes and washed her hands. She took out some tools from her space and looked at the 2 doctors. She asked, "Did the dean tell the 2 of you?" Listen to my commands and don't let out any screams that might disturb me. At the same time, don't tell anyone what you've seen here. Yes, we understand. The dean already told us. The two doctors nodded in agreement. Inwardly, they were doubtful. Did the students of the pill department really have the medical skills to save Director Liu? Let them see if my brother is outside. Tell him to change his clothes and wash his hands before coming in. Hearing this, one of the doctors walked out and gave the order. Not long after, Guan Shilin walked in. Xiao Jiu, do you need my help with anything? Guan Shilin asked. He walked to the bedside and glanced at Director Liu, then at Fengjiu. Fengjiu looked up at him and smiled. Brother, you have a heavy responsibility. Remember to wipe my sweat when I perform the surgery. Don't let it drip down. No problem, Guan Shilin said with a smile. The door to the teaching area was closed, hiding everything inside. The people outside only knew that the student named Fengjiu was treating Director Liu, but didn't know how. The dean and the vice head who stood outside looked at each other, worried and nervous. They'd long, of course. Doctor, of course, but they had never seen his medical skills for themselves, of course. No doctor could guarantee, of course.
How?
Director Liu.
Of.
They could only wait for the results of the treatment. Does Feng Nine really have medical skills? Why would the dean and the others believe him? That's right. He's a student of the Pill Institute just like us. How could he dare to treat someone who couldn't be cured by the Pill Institute's pharmacists and doctors? I think the dean and the others are just trying to make a last resort. The vice head went to the black market and didn't find the ghost doctor's whereabouts, so he could only let Fengjiu try. That kid is bold. Isn't he afraid that Director Liu will die in his hands? Outside the teaching area, the people waiting were discussing while paying attention to the movements inside. However, 2 hours passed, and there was still no movement. 4 hours passed, and there was still no movement. Chapter 725. The moment the door opened, the dean, the vice academy head, and Director Liu quickly turned around to see Fengjiu and Guan Shilin, dressed in green, walking out together. Their expressions were indifferent, and there was nothing special about them. However, when they saw the two doctors, their hearts couldn't help but sink. Could it be that he still couldn't be saved? 8 hours. According to what Emochin said, Director Liu should have been dead for 4 hours. Dean, Vice Academy Head, Director Liu is inside. I've already instructed the two doctors to take care of him. You can handle the rest as you see fit. There shouldn't be anything else for me to do here, so I'll head back first. Fengjiu said and walked out with Guan Shilin. When the three heard Fengjiu's words, their hearts thumped. Was Director Liu really dead? Did he want them to take care of his funeral? Thinking of this, they hurriedly walked inside. When they were outside, Fengjiu said to Guan Shilin and Yi Jing, I can't take it anymore. I didn't get enough sleep this morning, and now I've been working for 8 hours. I have to go back and make up for it. Okay, then go back and rest quickly. I won't disturb you today. I'll find you tomorrow afternoon. Guan Shilin smiled and gestured for her to go back quickly. Okay, then I'll go first. As she spoke, she looked at Yi Jing, who looked like she wanted to say something but was hesitating. She smiled and said, Don't worry, Director Liu is fine. The operation was very successful. I've already instructed the two doctors to take care of the rest. He should wake up in 2 days. If he recovers well, he should be able to get out of bed and walk around in half a month. Hearing this, Yi Jing's tensed heart finally relaxed. She looked at Fengjiu, took her hand, and said gratefully, Thank you, Fengjiu. No need to thank me. She waved her hand and smiled. Then, she sat on the flying feather and headed toward her immortal's cave. She sighed softly in her heart. I feel that cultivating in this academy is really too busy. There are so many things that I can't even get a good night's sleep. If I'm not careful, I'm afraid that even my immortal's cave might be blown up. At the same time, when San Tian, who had entered to check on the situation, saw the pale faces and trembling lips of the two doctors, he could not help but stop in his tracks. How is Director Liu? the president asked, his gaze falling on the two doctors. When the two doctors saw them, they could not help but exhale softly. They calmed themselves down and said, "Don't worry, Director Liu is fine." "I'm fine? Are you really all right?" The vice president raised his voice slightly and pointed at the person lying on the bed behind them in disbelief. Is there a hole in his head? Are you all right?" Hearing the deputy hospital director mention this, the two doctors' faces paled even more, but they still nodded. "Yes," Fengjiu said that he's fine. His life is saved and he'll wake up in 2 days. If he recovers well, he'll be able to get out of bed in half a month. Director Liu is fine, but something had almost happened to the two of them. They had never seen anyone who dared open a hole in someone's head. When they'd seen that scene, their legs had gone weak. Director Liu's life was saved, but the two of them had been holding on from the beginning to the end. They had not fainted from fright. Even though they did not want to admit it, they had to admit that this student called Fengjiu's medical skills were really good. While they were terrified, they were also shocked and shaken. They knew very well that this was a medical technique that they had never seen before. It was a medical technique that was unknown to the world, a medical technique that was controlled by someone else. They even had a trace of doubt in their hearts. Chapter 7:26. News of Director Liu's survival quickly spread. Everyone in the academy knew that it was Fengjiu who had saved him. However, no one expected that the mediocre Fengjiu would have medical skills that surpassed those of the academy's two doctors. The students were curious as to how he had treated Director Liu. However, no matter how much they asked, they couldn't find out anything. They only knew that Director Liu's life was saved. Aside from the two doctors, only the dean, the vice dean, and Director Liu were allowed to visit Director Liu. Thus, even the other instructors didn't know what was going on inside. Unlike here, Fengjiu slept all the way until noon the next day. The oven sent someone to deliver food to her. She, Guanxilin, and Yi Jing ate at a new stone table under a tree. After clearing away the food on the table, they placed tea on the table and chatted. It wasn't until the dean and vice dean arrived that Yi Jing and Guanxilin left. "Dean, vice dean, why are you here? Don't tell me something happened?" Seeing the two of them, she instinctively felt that something troublesome had happened. Seeing this, the two of them couldn't help but smile. "Today, we're here to talk to you." They sat down and looked at the youth in front of them. "What do you want to talk about?" She poured them a cup of tea. "Forgive me for being blunt, but with your reputation as the ghost doctor, why would you come to Star Cloud?" the dean asked directly. "Of course I'm here to learn alchemy," she said matter-of-factly, then shook her head. "I just didn't expect that Star Cloud's alchemy department would have only one student. I still have to earn contribution points, and the instructor's alchemy skills don't seem very high either. To be honest, I'm a little disappointed." Hearing this, the two of them paused for a moment, then smiled. It's not that the alchemy department doesn't have any high-level instructors. It's just that there haven't been any students participating in the alchemy assembly for several years now, so some of the high-level alchemists have been poached away by other schools. Now, in addition to the two alchemists, there's also a pill ancestor. However, the pill ancestor's status is extraordinary, so he usually doesn't appear to teach students. The students are all taught by the two alchemists. Grandmaster of Alchemies. Her eyes flickered and she asked, "Is that the man in white who looks like an immortal?" She had only seen that guy concocting pills, and it was not a low-grade pill. She guessed that he should be a teacher. Perhaps he was the alchemy grandmaster that the two of them were talking about? White-robed, banished immortal. The dean and the vice dean looked at each other, slightly startled. They smiled and shook their heads. "No, the person you're talking about should be young Master Mo Chen. He's our guest, not an alchemist of the academy. However, his alchemy skills are indeed very outstanding. Even in a first-class country, there are very few people like him." Speaking up to this point, the dean smiled and said, "Today, besides thanking you, I also want to ask what kind of remuneration you need. As long as the academy has it, we can accept it." Hearing this, Fengjiu smiled and raised his eyebrows. Didn't I already pay you? Just give me 3 meals a day in Star Cloud. Hearing this, the two of them were slightly stunned.
How can that be?
How about this? Before they could finish speaking, he waved his hand and interrupted them. If I say it's okay, then it's okay. However, my identity as the ghost doctor, you have to keep it a secret.
Just don't tell anyone about it.
I don't want people coming to me every 2 to 3 days to ask for medicine. Chapter 7:27. Don't worry, we know. The two smiled as they spoke, their hearts filled with emotion. Although he saved people based on his mood, they couldn't help but admire him for being able to disregard former enmity and save Director Lu's life without asking for a reward. In the end, although the two didn't mention the matter of reward, they kept it in mind and did their best to help him in other aspects. After chatting for a while, the two got up and said their goodbyes. Before leaving, the vice dean seemed to recall something and turned around. Fengjiu, I heard that Ouyang Xiu issued a challenge to you? Yes, that seems to be the case. She nodded. When the dean and vice dean heard this, their mouths couldn't help but twitch. From his words, it was clear that he didn't take the matter to heart. However, even if he didn't take it to heart, that didn't necessarily mean that Ouyang Xiu didn't take it to heart. He was probably preparing to meet him on the storm platform in 3 days. Well, that's that then. If there's any trouble you can't solve, come find us. With that, the two stepped onto their flying swords and left. After they left, Fengjiu looked at the token that the dean had given her. It was said that with this thing, she could enter and leave the academy at will. Moreover, with this token in hand, there were many conveniences. I really made a killing, she thought. Not only did I save Director Lu, but the ovens will be able to cook for her, and I even got this thing. It really was a good deal. Smiling, she put the command medallion away and returned to her immortal's cave to work on her cultivation. She didn't put the matter of the challenge in her heart. However, on Ouyang Xiu's side, 3 days had passed. He was wearing a white academy uniform and had been waiting on the storm platform since early in the morning. The platform was filled with students from the Spiritual Academy and the Xian Academy, all of them filled with anticipation. Although they didn't think that Fengjiu would dare to fight, they still hoped that he would. This way, they would be able to see him being taught a lesson by Ouyang Xiu. However, as time passed, more and more students gathered, waiting to see the challenge. Ouyang Xiu was still standing on the platform, but the green-robed youth was nowhere to be seen. Fengjiu will not come, right? That's possible. That brat looks like a coward. He has heard of how powerful Senior Ouyang is. How would he dare to accept the challenge? That's true. He probably doesn't dare to accept the challenge and is hiding. What a pity. I was hoping to see him being taught a lesson by Ouyang seniors. Hearing everyone's discussion, a student lowered his voice and said, "Let's just talk about it here. Don't let the mentors hear it. Otherwise, you'll be severely punished."
Why?
Don't tell me you're not allowed to speak? The other person disagreed. Haven't you heard? Director Lu woke up this morning, and now the mentors are convinced of Fengjiu's medical skills. They are all protecting him. If they hear us saying that we hope Fengjiu will be fixed, do you think they won't fix us? Is Director Lu really awake?
Yes.
She's awake. This morning, the director and the deputy director went over to take a look. I didn't expect this. That brat really does have some skills. Isn't that so? It's said that the 2 doctors from the academy were only his assistants that day. TSK, how big of a face is that? Even my family can't invite the doctors from the academy, but they actually went to assist that brat. Chapter 7:28. Don't tell me he went to Fengjiu's place to look for trouble? TSK. If that brat is hiding in his cave, even Senior Ouyang won't be able to do anything. His barrier is very strong. It's said that if he sees that brat sleeping, he can set up a soundproof barrier. No matter how noisy it is outside, he won't be disturbed inside. Let's go and take a look. As the students spoke, they followed behind them and headed towards Fengjiu's cave. Guan Shilin, who had heard the news, did not pay attention to it. It would be useless even if that Ouyang Xiao went. Xiao Jiao had no intention of competing with him. Moreover, he was only in the middle stage of the foundation establishment stage. He was no match for Xiao Jiao. The news that Ouyang Xiao went to Fengjiu's cave spread quickly. The mentors, the dean, and the vice headmaster also heard the news, but they did not pay attention to it. They felt that it was better for the young people to settle this matter themselves. As everyone expected, when Ouyang Xiao arrived at Fengjiu's cave, he did not see anyone at all. The three beasts guarding outside the cave only glanced at him, then found a place to hang around. Ouyang Xiao did not leave when he did not see anyone from Fengjiu. Instead, he sat down cross-legged outside the cave and closed his eyes to rest. He planned to guard here until he came out. When Yi Jing heard the news, she saw him sitting cross-legged outside the cave. Seeing that he had no intention of leaving, she hesitated for a moment, then went forward and called out, "Senior Ouyang." The whole school knew that he liked her, but she did not have that kind of feeling towards him. Like the other students, she also thought that he challenged Fengjiu because of her. She had already told him that she had no feelings for him. He also said that he knew what to do in the future. So, why did he still challenge Fengjiu? Ouyang Xiao opened his eyes and looked at Yi Jing. Before she could speak, he said, "I challenged him not because of you." Hearing this, Yi Jing sighed in relief and said softly, "She won't accept the challenge." To her, accepting a challenge is troublesome. She hates trouble. "You seem to know him very well." He looked at her and asked, "Do you like him?" Hearing this, Yi Jing smiled. "She's my friend. Then you should persuade him to come out and fight me. Otherwise, I won't leave." He spoke in a low voice, his gaze landing on the cave abode in front of him. When he first met the youth, he only wanted to see what kind of person this Fengjiu was. However, when he saw him, he had the urge to fight him. His intuition told him that he was definitely not an ordinary student. Yi Jing shook her head. "I can't do that. If you want to wait here, then wait. But in the end, you're just wasting your time here." With that, she glanced at the cave and left. Seeing this, Ouyang Xiao closed his eyes and ignored him. Instead, he sat cross-legged and meditated. Some of the students who had followed them saw this, and left one after another. It seemed that Ouyang Xiao was planning to stay in front of the cave abode. However, it seemed that Fengjiu would not come out either. These two people had the time to waste here, but they did not. In the evening, when it was time for dinner, the boundary opened. Fengjiu, dressed in green, walked out, stretching. When he saw the figure sitting in front of the cave abode, he was shocked. Chapter 7:29. Ouyang Xiao looked at the green-clothed youth and said with a dark expression, "Did you forget that I challenged you?" Hearing this, Fengjiu grinned. "I didn't forget, but I didn't accept it either." Hearing this, he stood up and stared at the green-clothed youth with a sharp gaze. "You're not weak, so why didn't you accept my challenge?" "If I didn't accept it, then I didn't accept it. Why do you have to ask so many questions?" She rolled her eyes and walked past him to sit at the stone table under the tree. She gently tapped her hands on the table and looked in the direction of the food delivery. Seeing this, Ouyang Xiao's spiritual energy surged, intending to force him to make a move. However, just as his spiritual energy surged, before he could get close to the green-clothed youth sitting under the tree, he heard him call out casually, "Xiao He." As soon as the lazy voice fell, the big black bear that was originally squatting in a daze suddenly stood up and pounced at him. The ferocity of its momentum made him almost unable to dodge. He lifted his sleeve and looked at the scratches made by the bear's claws. His sharp gaze moved, and in the next moment, he attacked the big black bear. Under the tree, Fengjiu turned his head and rested his chin on his hand as he watched the battle between the man and the bear. He saw that Ouyang Xiao's movements were nimble and his attacks were fierce. Although he was fighting barehanded, the spiritual energy surging in his hands was like a sharp sword. It was so sharp that it made whooshing sounds in the air. Roar! Xiao He roared and released the pressure of a holy beast, causing him to retreat a few steps. Ouyang Xiu's face darkened. Even though he was a foundation establishment stage cultivator, he could only barely fight back against a holy beast. Under the pressure of a holy beast, his body stiffened and his speed slowed down. Xiaohei had Fengjiu's instructions and would not really hurt him. Therefore, he was just teasing him. Under the tree, when Fengjiu saw the person who came to deliver food not far away, her eyes lit up. Her figure flashed and rushed toward the person. After taking the 3-layer lunchbox from his hand, she directly returned to the cave residence and closed the enchantment. Seeing this, Ouyang Xiu was furious. Fengjiu, come out. This was the first time he had ever seen someone avoid a challenge and let his pet beast do it. Unfortunately, his pet beast wasn't just any ordinary pet beast. It was a holy beast, equivalent to a golden core cultivator. How could a mid-stage foundation establishment cultivator like him possibly defeat it? Lao Bai had a piece of cloth tied around its mouth. Fengjiu had specially tied it around its mouth to prevent it from speaking. At this moment, it was looking at Ouyang Xiu, who was in a sorry state after the battle with Xiaohei, and it let out a muffled cry. Ouyang Xiu didn't understand. If he did, he would know that it was saying, "You can't even defeat Little Black, yet you want to fight with its master?" He was simply asking for a beating. In the end, Ouyang Xiu was driven away by Blackie and left angrily. When he first met Fengjiu, he just wanted to see what kind of person this young man was. But after seeing this young man, he had the urge to fight him. After waiting for half a day on the storm platform and seeing no one, he went to the cave to stop him. Who knew that he would send a big black bear to trick him? Not only did this not extinguish his desire to fight, but it also made him even more eager to fight him. It didn't matter if he didn't have a chance today. He would definitely find a chance to compete with him. Chapter 730. The purple-robed man stopped at the side gate of the spiritual academy, turned around and said to the group of escorts, "You can go back now." "Yes," the group of escorts replied. They watched as the purple-robed man took out his identity token and entered the academy before turning around and leaving. Although the sky was gradually turning dark, there were still quite a few students walking about within the spiritual academy, chatting in groups of 3 to 5. When they saw the figure that had appeared within the spiritual academy, the students that were originally sitting on the grass immediately stood up and respectfully gave a bow towards him. "Greetings, Senior Nya." "Senior Nya, you're back." "Senior Nya, it's great that you're back." The students all gathered around. Even though they were all students of the spiritual academy, when they saw this person, they couldn't help but show a respectful and flattering expression. This was because not only was he a heaven-rank student of their spiritual academy, he was also the number 1 of the 10 heavenly prides, Enrich. Other than being the number 1 in the School of Stars and Clouds, he was also the crown prince of the Green Ting Kingdom, a student that was highly regarded by the dean and the rest. The dean once said that among the students of the School of Stars and Clouds, Enchanting had the highest chance of entering the Golden Core stage within 50 years. Because of this, he had a large number of supporters in the academy. Regardless of whether it was the Spiritual Academy or the Xian Academy, there were students who secretly supported him. Although the academy had already started for some time, it was said that he was entangled with some matters and couldn't return to the academy for a while, which was why he delayed his return. Now that everyone saw him return, they were all filled with joy. They all told him about the things that happened in the academy during his absence. "Senior Nya, Fengjiu has only been in the academy for a few months, but he has become a famous figure in the academy. When his name is mentioned, everyone knows who he is." Enchanting, who was surrounded by the crowd, had a cold and indifferent expression. He was originally quietly listening to the people around him talk about the recent events. However, when he heard that name, his heart trembled and he suddenly stopped in his tracks. His sharp gaze instantly turned towards the student who spoke.
Who are you talking about?
"Fengjiu?" "Yes, it's Fengjiu. That brat is a new student of the alchemy department this year, but he has attracted the attention of the instructors and deans of the various departments." "That's right. His fame has almost surpassed the top 10 prodigies of the academy. Senior Ouyang challenged him 3 days ago and asked him to fight on the storm platform. Who knew that he would hide like a coward in his cave, not daring to come out? That kid knows that he is no match for Senior Ouyang. Of course, he doesn't dare to accept the challenge. If he knew that the #1 prodigy of our academy, Senior Nye, had returned, he would definitely be so scared that he would hide in that cave and not dare to come out. Ha ha ha, that's right. Enchanting could no longer hear what the students around him were saying. There was a loud bang in his head, and only one message echoed in his head. Fengjiu. That woman was actually in the School of Stars and Clouds. Moreover, a woman disguised as a man to sneak in? Was it really her? Or was it just the same name? At this moment his heart, which had been calm for a long time, rose and fell again because of her news. Anticipation, excitement, joy, and uncontrollable joy filled his heart. Chapter 731. The next morning, Enchanting, who had changed into his uniform, arrived at the peak of the alchemy department under the guidance of a student. He did not approach, and only looked from afar. The morning air in the mountain forest was fragrant. The leaves swayed gently in the wind, and the birds on the branches jumped happily, chirping. The cave was quiet, and there was no movement at all. Under the big tree in front of the cave, a big black bear was squatting, and a strange old horse was lying on the grass, wagging its tail. Seeing the familiar white horse, his eyes narrowed, and his heart skipped a beat. It really was her. Even if he did not see her, her steed, Lao Bai, was there. She must be here as well. He thought that he would never see her again, but unexpectedly, they were in the same academy, and he was a student of the same academy. At this moment, his silent heart seemed to come alive and began to beat again. He did not stay for long, and only turned to leave after confirming. Not long after he left, Fengjiu, who was in the cave, took off her green clothes and changed into a red robe. After instructing the 3 beasts to guard the cave, she went to the Xian Academy and the Spiritual Academy, planning to ask her brother and Yi Jing to go out with her. However, when she arrived at the Xian Academy, she was told that her brother had gone to spar with some students of the Xian Academy. Thus, she went to Yi Jing's courtyard. Fengjiu, why are you here? Yi Jing was surprised to see her. She winked at her and said, I came to ask if you want to go with me to the city? As she spoke, she tossed the token in her hand. Yi Jing was surprised. You actually got the dean's token? The dean gave it to me. Do you want to go? Yes, of course. She smiled and said, Wait for me, I'll go in and change. As she spoke, she quickly went in. 2 hours later, the two of them arrived at Star Cloud City. Their outstanding appearance and elegant temperament attracted the attention of many passers-by. Even though the city was filled with heroes, their appearance and temperament still made them look like cranes and a flock of chickens. They were very dazzling. Let's find a place to eat first, then go shopping, Fengjiu said. The first thing she thought of was not anything else but delicious food. I'm more familiar with the city. I'll take you to one. They make the most authentic dishes here, Yi Jing said as she led her through the main street and into another alley. As they passed through the alley, a tall and thin middle-aged man walked towards them. He was dressed in brocade clothes. As he walked, he looked at the small stall on the ground of the alley. When he saw the 2 people in front of him, his eyes lit up. His gaze fell on the gentle and moving Yi Jing in a light blue dress. Although it was an alley, it wasn't small. Other than the stalls on both sides, there were still about 3 people walking side by side in the middle. Yi Jing and Fengjiu chatted as they walked. Fengjiu's gaze was focused on the small stalls on the ground. Other than some trinkets, there were also some medicinal herbs. Although Yi Jing was looking ahead, she also noticed the tall and thin middle-aged man's gaze. However, she didn't care. As they walked past each other, she had already taken a step towards Fengjiu to avoid the middle-aged man. However, The two people who shouldn't have bumped into each other were accidentally bumped into by the middle-aged man when they brushed past each other. Chapter 732. What's wrong? Fungio turned around to look at her and saw her glaring angrily at the tall and thin man who was walking away. His gaze fell on the man and sized him up. Nothing, let's go. She suppressed the anger in her heart and retracted her gaze. Fungio raised his eyebrows slightly. He didn't notice and didn't know what happened. However, seeing that she didn't say anything, he felt that it shouldn't be a big matter and didn't ask any further. However, when the two of them walked back after eating, intending to check out the elixir shop, they bumped into the tall and thin middle-aged man from before on the main street. At a stall on the main street, a fat woman in her 30s wearing a flowery dress was pointing at the vendor and cursing angrily with one hand on her waist. There were many onlookers surrounding her, and the tall and thin middle-aged man was squeezing around the woman by the side, seemingly unintentionally raising his hand to rub against the woman's chest. Seeing this, her eyes turned cold. She immediately recalled that when they brushed past each other in the alley earlier, this middle-aged man must have used the same trick to take advantage of Yi Jing. Sure enough, she glanced at Yi Jing beside her and saw that her expression had turned cold. People like this should be taught a lesson every time we meet. I didn't know earlier, but if I did, I definitely wouldn't let him out of that alley. Fungio said as his gaze fell on the tall and thin middle-aged man. I avoided it, but I'm still a little angry. Her appearance was not bad, but because of her good background and her own cultivation, most people wouldn't dare to take advantage of her, and she had never met such an old, wretched man. In her opinion, people of this age wouldn't do such a shameless thing. However, it was obvious that she had never met such a person before. It didn't mean that such a person didn't exist. Look at me. Fungio smiled at her and stepped into the lively crowd in front of her. She also squeezed in and came to the side of the tall and thin middle-aged man. Seeing that he was pretending to lean forward to watch the fun, but secretly using his hand to rub the woman next to him, she couldn't help curling her lips. She stretched out her hand and directly pinched the fat woman's buttocks, who was cursing with her hands on her waist. Then, she quietly took a step back. The expression of the fat woman, who was cursing loudly, froze. Her face, which was already filled with anger, became even more furious. When she suddenly turned around, she just happened to see the tall and thin man behind her glancing at a woman beside him from the corner of his eyes. He raised his elbow and seemingly inadvertently bumped into the woman's chest. Seeing this, she angrily glared at him. Her bright red lips were like a bloody mouth as she cursed, "You son of a bitch! You son of a bitch! You dare to take advantage of me! I think you're tired of living." She grabbed his collar with one hand and pulled him in front of her, spitting saliva everywhere as she cursed. Is my fat arm something that just anyone can touch? You old thing, why don't you take a piss and look at your own wretched appearance? You're still squeezing and bumping into women? See if I don't teach you a lesson. As she cursed, she angrily lifted the tall and thin man into the air with both hands and prepared to slam him to the ground. The tall and thin man was shocked, and his expression changed greatly. Don't mess around. Don't mess around.
Ah.
Chapter 733. The stunned crowd only heard a loud bang from the ground. When the fat woman landed heavily on the tall, thin man's stomach, they could faintly feel the ground shake.
Pooh.
The tall, thin man didn't scream because he couldn't even scream. When the fat woman landed heavily on his stomach, he only spat out white foam from his mouth. His face turned deathly pale, and he couldn't even make a sound. That's right, he was at most 90 kilograms, while the fat woman in her 30s was close to 200 kilograms. Just her weight alone was enough to make someone half dead, let alone when she landed on him so heavily. Spitting out white foam was already considered light. Not far away, Yijing watched with her mouth slightly agape. Her face was filled with shock and astonishment. Even when Fengjiu came to her side, she still hadn't recovered from her shock. How is it? I don't even need to lift a finger to take care of people. Once I vent my anger, I save energy. Fengjiu's eyes were smiling. His chin was slightly raised, and his handsome face exuded a dazzling and soaring spirit. His entire person looked so dazzling and captivating that it attracted the gazes of some of the young women around him. They couldn't look away for a long time. Xiao. The sound of a cold weapon suddenly came with a whoosh. This sound didn't stand out in the bustling street. It could even be said that the sharp sound of the airflow was almost drowned out by the clamor of the street. When Yijing heard Fengjiu's words, she couldn't help but smile. Her originally low mood was lifted when she saw the tall, thin man being taught a lesson. Just as she was about to speak, she saw Fengjiu's expression suddenly change. Without waiting for her to ask or react, he was hugged by her and instantly retreated to the right. Xiao.
Bang.
The sharp air flow swept past with a whoosh and landed on the main pillar of the shop behind Fengjiu with a bang. Seeing this scene, Yijing's expression changed, and she felt a lingering fear in her heart. She didn't even hear that sound, nor did she sense it. If Fengjiu hadn't brought her away, that cold weapon would have definitely landed on Fengjiu's body. Withdrawing the smile on her face, Feng Jiuqing, who had a cold expression on her face, had a cold glint in her eyes. She glanced at the sleeve arrow nailed to the pillar and said to Yijing, "They are here for me. You should return to the academy first." In her heart, she was thinking, who is it? Who did this to her? That arrow was only to test her reaction and not to take her life. She was certain that the person who shot the arrow was at least a golden core cultivator, but the arrow shot only 30% of its power. At this moment, 12 black-clothed people rushed out from the shadows. 8 of them held long swords that glinted with a cold light and overflowed with killing intent. Their sharp and cold gazes fell on the red-clothed Fengjiu one by one. As soon as they appeared, their sharp killing intent swept through the entire street. The powerful pressure instantly froze the air. The aura of death enveloped the world with the arrival of powerful cultivators, causing everyone to scream in panic and scramble to escape to a safe place to hide. 8 golden core cultivators and 4 nascent soul cultivators. What a big move. She coldly snorted, and her gaze fell on the 12 people. At the same time, she pushed the stunned Yijing behind her. "Let's go," she shouted in a low voice. If she knew that they would be ambushed, she definitely wouldn't have brought Yijing out. Chapter 734. Especially when she heard that there were 8 golden core cultivators and 4 nascent soul cultivators, she was even more terrified. Under this kind of battle strength, under this kind of ambush, how could she have a chance of survival? In her family, only the ancestor of her family had a nascent soul cultivation. But now there were 4 nascent soul cultivators and 8 golden core cultivators all at once. The shock of this kind of expert's arrival, this kind of murderous aura and pressure made her unable to move her legs, let alone leave. She was only a 3rd-stage Great Spirit Master Cultivator, not even a Foundation Establishment Cultivator. Under this kind of pressure, it was already considered good that the bloodline aura in her body did not go berserk. "Fengjiu, I can't leave." She resisted the pressure and spat out these words with difficulty. At this moment, she deeply understood that it was stupid to say anything about fighting side by side with Fengjiu. She could only hurry back to the academy to ask for help. Perhaps only then would she be able to save Fengjiu's life. Hearing this, Fengjiu glanced back and saw her pale face, blood seeping out of the corner of her mouth, and cold sweat rolling down her forehead. He immediately gathered spiritual energy in his palm and reached out to support her, sending her dozens of meters away. Yijing looked at him deeply and did not say anything. She quickly gathered her energy and left, flying back to the academy. The 12 people did not care about Yijing's departure. Perhaps they felt that she was not worth their attention, Or perhaps they felt that even if she brought reinforcements, they would not be a match for them. Their mission, in their eyes, was only this person called Fengjiu. Are you going to obediently come with us? Or do you want us to take action? One of the 4 nascent soul cultivators in the lead spoke in a deep voice, his sharp and cold gaze fixed on the red-clothed youth. Who sent you here? She asked, quickly calculating her chances of survival. Also, who had sent these people? There were 8 golden core cultivators and 4 nascent soul cultivators among the people sent here. It was obvious that they had assessed her strength. If they were only golden core cultivators, it would be fine. However, the 4 nascent soul cultivators were the worst. Although she was confident, she was not arrogant. With her strength, it was impossible for her to deal with these people in front of her. Furthermore, even if Yi Jing were to return to the academy and ask for help, the headmaster and the vice-headmaster would not be a match for these people. Damn it! She had never provoked such a powerful force before. However, as soon as this thought appeared in his mind, he was suddenly startled. His eyes were filled with astonishment and understanding. You are from the 8 great empires. It wasn't a question, but a confirmation. Only a force like the 8 great empires could casually bring out 8 Jindan stage cultivators and 4 Yuanying stage cultivators, and they said that they would go with them? Could it be that Xianyuan Mose had encountered something troublesome? Was that why these people were thinking about her? Only the people from the 8 great empires would dare to act so arrogantly in broad daylight. They were not afraid of alerting the governor of Star Cloud City or the headmaster of the academy. They were arrogant, conceited, and condescending. They did not place anyone in their eyes at all. When they heard Fengjiu mention the 8 great empires, the eyes of the 4 nascent soul cultivators in the lead moved slightly. They raised their hands, and the 8 golden core cultivators behind them turned their sharp swords. The long swords glinted with a cold light and carried a sharp air current as they attacked the red figure in front of them. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.